Hey everyone, welcome to Let's Talk. I'm John, and today we're here to talk about the 1973 Western, directed and starring Clint Eastwood. And we're also here to talk about its brand new Kino Lorber 4K Blu-ray that just came out. But before we dive into all that, if you are a fan of 4K Blu-ray reviews, movie reviews, tech and game reviews, we try and do them all here on the channel. And nothing helps out the channel more than by you liking this video and subscribing to the channel. So before we get started in the review, if I sound a little nasally or congested in this video, it's actually because I have the flu at the current moment. So I did the best I could to clear myself out before I shot this review. But if you hear it a little bit, that's the reason why. So High Plains Drifter originally came out in 1973. It's the second film directed by Clint Eastwood. It also stars Clint Eastwood in the lead role as the stranger. And just like the Man with No Name trilogy from Sergio Leone from the 60s that he starred in, this character has no name. We never find out his name, although the ending does leave it up for interpretation. So at the very beginning of this movie, Clint Eastwood's character rides into town, a little town called Lago, and this little town is set along this beautiful lake. It actually was filmed on location in California, so this is actually a real place. They didn't shoot this on the Warner Brothers lot like they originally wanted to. Clint wanted to shoot this on location, and I'm really glad he did because this is a beautiful looking movie. That is one of the shining stars of this movie, and most Westerns really do look beautiful, and that's one of the big reasons why I try and grab them every time they come to 4K, is because Westerns are just shot, you get that beautiful scope, all the mountains in the background. It really just shines. It really shows you just the beauty of the Old West. And then this movie also shows you the simplicity and just the dirty and grittiness of the Old West, because when he first rolls into town, you can just notice on everybody's skin how sweaty and dirty they are. The places that they all work in are just dirty and grimy and run down. Although all the windows are basically brand new. Very nice single plate glass windows out in all these places. Although a bunch of people do get thrown or shot through a bunch of them, which is unfortunate for all of them. But as Clint Eastwood arrives in the town, right away, he pulls into a bar, he gets himself a beer, a bottle of whiskey, and a couple of people who live in the town start to fuck with him. Then he heads over to go get a nice shave and get a haircut, and these guys start screwing with him again. And what does he do? Well, he shoots all three of them. And then these townspeople, they get an idea. Okay, we have a little bit of a problem. We got these three prisoners, they're getting out of jail, they're going to be coming back for their money. Let's hire this guy to defend our town. Classic Western tale. We've seen this in the Magnificent Seven. When we just talked about Roadhouse, it's the same exact thing. It's a very classic Western tale of we need somebody to defend our town because we're not capable. And none of these people in this town are capable of defending this town. They're all weak. Even the sheriff is extremely weak. The mayor. Nobody in this town is capable of defending themselves, even though, as we find out as the story progresses, they put themselves in this spot because they wanted to cover up the fact that they hired these three men to kill a U.S. Marshal who discovers that the mine that they have that is actually funding this town and keeping this town going is actually on government land. And to cover that up, they hired these three guys. These guys actually killed the Marshal and then buried him in an unmarked grave. And as we find out again through the story, Clint Eastwood knows this. He has his own little plan of revenge for these men and for this town in general and all the people who tried to cover up the death of this Marshal, because everybody watched as these three men killed this Marshal. And that is actually one of the most awesome sequences in this movie, because they kind of put the camera where the whips, because they bullwhip this guy to death. So they have the camera where the bullwhips are coming at the camera, and you see the camera moving around in a first-person view. And I just thought that was awesome. That is one of the coolest shots, and they did this in 1973, and it just shows the mind that Clint Eastwood has for filmmaking, and the fact that he was able to actually do that in 1973. It's very original thinking. He did say that he got the idea for this movie because of the influences of his two mentors in Don Siegel and Sergio Leone, and you can totally see that on screen, especially with Sergio Leone and the sense of humor in this movie, because that's totally a Sergio Leone thing, as we saw in the Man with No Name trilogy, mainly in The Good, Bad, and the Ugly, is that really dark sense of humor that it really does shine throughout this entire movie. And just like in movies like Unforgiven that really show the character that Clint Eastwood used to play and like how he was a murderer and a no-good scumbag, well, Clint Eastwood in this movie, he's very much an anti-hero. He's gonna do the right thing, but it's really for his own gain. He does care about a couple people in town, but it's really for his own gain. Early in the movie, he actually rapes a woman. He does say like, oh, she didn't seem like she wasn't enjoying it, but he still does do it. So this isn't a good man. This isn't somebody with really high morals. He just has his own set of morals, and he's willing to overlook other sets of morals for his own gain. But don't go into this thinking that this is some real high hero of the Old West who's just gonna save the day and is always gonna do the right thing. No, that's not what Clint Eastwood's character is, and that's really what you get Clint Eastwood for, even though he is the director. He just plays those anti-heroes so perfectly because he has that just level of anger that you can kind of just feel deep in like his soul and the way he portrays these characters, that something is just off about this guy, but he's tough, and that's the big thing. And as the movie progresses, we get to see some great shootouts. I just love how they paint the whole town red to get ready for when these three guys show up, and it has a nice fantastic shootout at the end. And just again, just like in Unforgiven, a lot of it takes place at night, and you get the fire in the background. It just pops off your screen. It looks phenomenal, this movie. It's just so well directed, so well acted. And again, like with the ending, like I was saying, so it's a spoiler alert for this movie if you haven't seen it. I recommend seeing it highly. So at the very end, when the stranger is finally leaving town, he's riding out into the sunset just like how he came in. He just comes in, gets the job done, and he leaves. So as he's riding out, Mordecai, who's a friend of his, he actually makes him the sheriff and the mayor of the town because he seems to like the guy. He has a genuine heart.
Mayor, I'm the sheriff. No more Mordecai.
He rides up to him and he's like, I never did know your name. He's like, that's the last thing Clint Eastwood says, and he looks at him confused, and I think we're supposed to think that he's like either the ghost of this marshal, because the marshal is played by Clint Eastwood's actual stunt double, and in the original script it was actually supposed to be his brother, but Clint Eastwood decided he wanted to leave it more open to interpretation, so he cut that out, and that's the reason why we have that ending line. And I like to actually think it is the ghost of the marshal, although that means that the marshal is kind of a scumbag too when you really break it down. But I do like that idea, and I think it ends the movie on like this kind of like, really cool original note for westerns, which, even back in the 70s, westerns were kind of getting stale, and Clint Eastwood is such a good director, such a good actor, and really had his finger to the pulse of Hollywood. That's why he's Hollywood royalty, and that's exactly why he was able to make this film still feel original today. Watching this movie even just a couple days ago, it still holds up amazingly. It's still one of my personal favorite westerns. It would be in my top 10 westerns of all time. It doesn't reach the heights of Unforgiven, The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, Once Upon a Time in the West. Absolutely not. But it's still a phenomenal western, well directed, well acted, and one I think is definitely worth your time. And that's exactly why we're here today to talk about its brand new 4K Blu-ray from Kino Lorber. So here we have the 4K Blu-ray from Kino Lorber. And now what makes this 4K very unique is that only 2 years ago, Kino Lorber actually released this on Blu-ray. And that was based off a scan from about 10 years earlier from Universal. Now, I never actually owned this film physically. I've only ever seen this on streaming, and that's really it. I think I've never seen it any other way but on streaming. So this is my first time owning it, so I couldn't compare it to anything but a previous stream, and it's a huge jump from that. Now, I did read Blu-ray.com's review for this, and that reviewer seemed to like the 2020 Blu-ray a lot more than this because apparently they changed the color temperature in this film. Now, I couldn't compare it because I haven't seen it, but the color temperature, it seemed to be good for me, but from what he was saying, how the reds do kind of become more of like a light brown now, I can totally see that because they paint the whole town red to welcome home, as they say in here, the three people who killed this marshal. And I could totally see that, and I could see that they definitely did change the color temperature a little bit. But it did work for me. But before we do get into the visuals of it all, I want to just show you guys what the packaging is like. Now, you get a standard Kino Lorber 4K packaging here with the silver bar across the top. You take it off. You get the same box art underneath. You open it up, you get your Blu-ray disc, and you get your 4K disc. Both of them, they're Kino Lorber designs. No special art design for this. So it really just blends in with Kino Lorber's regular designs that they go for. And I have no problem with that. I like that I can leave all my Kino Lorbers on their shelf, and you get the Kino Lorber logo in the top corner. And they're all black on the side, so they really do fit together really nice on your shelf. Give it that like kind of Criterion feel of it where they do feel special on your shelf. And I really do appreciate that about their design. Would I like some individual disc design? Absolutely, but it's not worth complaining about here. Now, as far as the visuals go, this does have Dolby Vision HDR10. It is in native 4K. It's got its aspect ratio of 2.39, so you can expect the black bars on the top and bottom. And just like I said with Unforgiven, it would have been cool if we had like modern technology 50 years ago like they did with Nope and had IMAX cameras, because to see this possibly fill up your whole screen would be amazing. Now, that was impossible to do back in the 70s, so this is the best way to show off the scope and the vistas of the world, because like I said in the review, beautiful looking world, and I really thought it popped off my screen amazingly. I thought the skin in this movie also looked really good. Like, you get that sweaty look of the Western, and I thought that really looked good. I think the skin tones really did match. I didn't have any issue. It all looked real and natural. The world itself, I thought, looked very real and natural. I didn't really have many complaints about the visuals until I did some research into how other people felt about the visuals. Now, for me personally, I thought the visuals looked great. I was ready to come on here and tell you I thought that this was one of the most visually stunning westerns I have ever seen. I thought that this 4K looked better than Unforgiven, which I watched pretty recently. It looked like a modern 4K. I couldn't believe that this film was shot in 1973. Now, more older fans of this film might feel like, okay, it might have lost a little something with this jump to 4K, and I could totally understand that, but coming from it from my point of view, I thought everything looked great on the screen. This is the best that I have ever seen it. The Dolby Vision does great work. That contrast is perfect. The blacks are so deep, especially towards the end when, you know, most of the final fight scene takes place at night and the orange is just from the fire is coming up behind Clint Eastwood. And it just looks so amazing. You know, that's really what the Dolby Vision, the HDR, is really just doing amazing work. And if you're watching this on an OLED TV, you know, you're not gonna have any grays. The blacks are super deep. The color just pops off your screen and it looks just phenomenal. So I had no issues with the visuals on this. Actually, I thought that they were great. Kino did a great job cleaning this up. Now, I understand that other people might have some color temperature complaints, and that makes total sense because it is definitely changing the temperature of the original design of the film, and I totally can understand the complaints about that. But for me, it's a 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10 as far as visuals go. I don't think this movie's ever looked better. I can't imagine it looking any better than it does right now. So unless you're one of those people that has seen that 2020 Kino Lorber Blu-ray, it's probably not worth it to jump to the 4K because you might feel the same way as other people that feel like that previous Blu-ray is the better version. I don't have it to compare it to. This will be the definitive edition for me going forward. When I do rewatch this, I will rewatch this 4K. Now, audio-wise, it is the same DT Master Audio HD 5.1 that you did get on previous Blu-ray editions, and I thought that did great work. You know, it's a 1970s film, so you have that kind of over-exaggerated sound effects in the background. You know, when somebody gets off their horse, it sounds way louder than it really should. And that's good. That kind of fits into the charm of the 70s films, and I've always appreciated that. And other than that, though, it does sound great. Everything was clear. The dialogue was crystal clear. It made some good use of my rear speakers, which I was pretty surprised about. I didn't think that they would, but they did. And you could set the remote down. You don't have to worry about, you know, the dialogue and the action all being kind of off. Like, the dialogue and the action all matched up. The levels were perfect. They did a good job at making sure that you didn't have to touch your remote. You can set it down and it's perfect at whatever volume you want to set it at. The action doesn't blow you away to where you have to worry about everyone in your house waking up because you want to watch a Clint Eastwood movie. No, you can put the remote down. Everything is set. Perfect. Very good audio. Not the greatest audio, but you know what? For a 50-year-old movie, it's pretty damn good. For as much as I love Kino Lorber, they are not the greatest with extras, and this is no different. Really, all you're getting here is a few interviews, the trailer, and that's about it, and that's all going to be on your Blu-ray disc. And, you know, that's kind of expected from Kino Lorber, and I didn't expect them to get, like, Clint Eastwood to do a commentary track or interviews like that. Like I said with the Unforgiven review, that's just not Clint's style, and I don't expect that, but it would have been cool to get like a documentary or a look back or something like that. But we didn't get that here, and that's understandable, but this is something where I think Criterion would have took it to the next level. So I don't want to sound like I'm complaining too much because I do love the visual scan of this, but it is hard to recommend it at the full price with almost no new extras, and it sounds like some people are disappointed in the visual upgrade to this, so it's a little bit harder. Now, for me, I do love the visuals. I think the audio track is good. Now, the extras aren't the greatest, but the packaging is pretty standard Kino Lorber. So what would I give this out of 10? Well, I would still give this a pretty solid 8 out of 10, just because I'm truly really happy with the visuals on this. Now, and the audio really did match up really well with those visuals, so it was a great viewing experience for me. I really had a great time watching this. I got invested in the story again. I think it's a phenomenal Western. I think it's one of Clint Eastwood's best directed films. And it's something I think if you're a fan of this film, you're going to want to check out this Kino Lorber 4K. And if you do decide you want to grab this Kino Lorber 4K, we will leave our Amazon affiliate link in the description below. It costs no extra money for you, and it really does help the channel out. And another thing that really helps the channel out, guys, is by you liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and telling all your friends.